The mist, a living, breathing entity, clung to the ancient peaks of the Scottish Highlands like a forgotten promise. It swirled, a diaphanous veil, around the stoic shoulders of the bens, then descended, caressing the nascent greens of spring before finally settling upon the vast, inscrutable expanse of Loch Ness. Ilara Vance, a woman who had spent the better part of her adult life navigating the cold, precise equations of astrophysics, felt an unfamiliar tremor in her soul as the battered rental car finally rounded the last bend, revealing the legendary loch in all its brooding glory. She had come here seeking something. Perhaps an antidote to the sterile confinement of laboratories and the relentless pursuit of theoretical truth that, lately, felt more like a cage than a liberation. The universe, in all its cosmic grandeur, had begun to feel strangely distant, a mere collection of data points and abstract models. She yearned for tactile mystery, for an ancient secret that whispered on the wind, rather than one derived from a supernova's light curve. Loch Ness, a name synonymous with enigma, had beckoned her across continents, a faint, persistent hum in the back of her mind. Her cottage, a snug haven of stone and slate named Cailleach's Rest, the old woman's rest, a comforting thought, was nestled discreetly amidst a thicket of ancient Scots pine, just a stone's throw from the loch's edge. It was charmingly rustic, with thick walls that seemed to absorb the outside world, a peat-scented fireplace, and a small, leaded window offering a sliver of the loch, a glimpse of its shifting moods. The air, even indoors, carried the faint, earthy scent of damp soil, pine needles, and the clean mineral tang of the water. Ilara unpacked slowly, methodically. Not her usual astrophysics textbooks or quantum field theory notes, but sketchbooks, a well-worn copy of Celtic myths, and a small, intricately carved wooden pipe that had belonged to her grandfather, a man who believed more in the stories of the stars than their scientific composition. She lit the small, cast-iron stove, the gentle crackle of kindling a soothing counterpoint to the distant cry of a curlew. A kettle began to sing its quiet song, and soon the cottage was filled with the comforting aroma of brewing Earl Grey tea. The first few days were a slow, deliberate unwinding. Ilara walked. She walked for hours along the loch's banks, following ancient deer trails, tracing the convoluted path of the water's edge where pebbles the color of slate and obsidian glistened under the perpetually shifting light. She studied the water, not with a scientist's analytical gaze, but with an artist's yearning for nuance. It was never truly still. Even on the calmest days, an almost imperceptible undulation rippled across its surface, as if a colossal heart beat deep beneath its surface. The color was a symphony of greens and blues, deepening to an almost inky black at its center, reflecting the ever-changing sky, transforming from a serene azure to a tempestuous gray in the span of an hour. The loch felt alive, a sentient being, vast and ancient. She felt its immense presence, a heavy, silent observer of centuries. She found herself sketching a forgotten hobby from her youth, the gnarled branches of an ancient oak clinging precariously to the cliff face, its roots exposed like the veins of an old hand. The spectral quality of the morning mist transforming familiar landmarks into ethereal, transient forms. The dark, brooding shadows cast by the mountains, lending the loch an air of impenetrable mystery. Each stroke of charcoal on paper was a quiet meditation, a surrender to the immediate, tangible world around her. She was not seeking answers, not yet. She was simply allowing herself to be, to absorb the atmosphere. One afternoon, seeking shelter from a sudden, sharp shower, Ilara stumbled upon a small, unassuming pub nestled into a hillside overlooking a particularly secluded stretch of the loch. The Kelpie's Kiss read the hand-painted sign, weathered and faded. Inside, the air was warm with the scent of wood smoke and a faint hint of whiskey. A few locals sat nursing pints, their conversations a low rumble of Scottish brogue that was both foreign and comforting. A man sat alone at a table by the window, his back to the door. He was old, his face a roadmap of fine lines etched by sun and wind, his hair a shock of white, held back by a leather thong. He wore a heavy, homespun woolen jumper, and his eyes, when he turned as Ilara approached the bar, were the startling, deep blue of a cloudless summer sky over the loch. "Evening," he said, his voice a gravelly murmur, yet surprisingly gentle. "A bonny day despite the wee shower." Ilara smiled, ordering a dram of local whiskey. "Aye it is. I'm Ilara. I've rented Cailleach's Rest for a while. Hamish McLeod, he offered, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. Been here since before the loch could whisper my name. Welcome to Ness, Ilara. She has a way of calling folk, doesn't she? They fell into conversation easily, the kind that flows effortlessly, unburdened by expectation. Hamish spoke of the changing seasons, the habits of the local deer, the rare golden eagles that sometimes soared overhead. He spoke of the loch, too, but not in the sensationalist tones of a tourist guide. For Hamish, the loch was a living entity, a member of his family, a repository of stories that stretched back further than recorded history. She's deep, Hamish mused, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. His gaze distant, fixed on the rain-streaked window. Deeper than any sounder can truly tell. And ancient. There's a pulse to her. A kind of knowing that runs through the very bedrock. He paused, his blue eyes meeting hers. Folk come seeking Nessie, the beast. But what they don't ken is that Nessie, or what they call her, is but a ripple on a much bigger pond. A guardian, perhaps. A gatekeeper to something far older, far grander. Ilara felt a thrill, a resonance with his words that went beyond mere curiosity. This was what she had sought. A gatekeeper, she prompted softly, leaning forward. Hamish nodded slowly. Aye. The ancient ones, the Picts and the folk before them, they knew. They spoke of lines of power, unseen rivers of energy that crisscrossed the land, connecting sacred places. And Loch Ness, they said, was a great knot, a nexus where these lines converged, drawing energy from the very stars themselves. He gestured vaguely towards the ceiling. They weren't just simple farmers, Ilara. They looked up. They saw the cosmos in the patterns of the land. They understood the dance between earth and sky. His words resonated deeply with Ilara's scientific background. She had spent years studying the vast, energetic web of the cosmos, the dark matter, the cosmic microwave background, the subtle gravitational waves that rippled through space-time. Could there be a terrestrial analog? An energetic blueprint embedded in the very geology of the Earth amplified at certain points? It was a wild, almost heretical thought for a rigid astrophysicist, yet here, in this ancient land, it felt plausible. Over the next few weeks, Ilara found herself spending more and more time with Hamish. He became her quiet guide, not leading her directly, but offering subtle nudges, sharing fragments of lore, ancient songs, and the occasional cryptic proverb. He took her to a hidden glen where a forgotten standing stone, lichen-covered and worn smooth by millennia of wind and rain, stood alone, seeming to hum with an almost imperceptible energy. He showed her a small, secluded cave on the loch's shore, its entrance almost completely hidden by a curtain of ivy where the air inside felt strangely warm, still, and laden with a faint, metallic scent. This is where the veil is thinnest, lass, Hamish had murmured, his voice hushed as they stood outside the cave. Between the worlds. The ancients would come here on the nights the stars aligned, when the Great Bear stood sentinel over the loch and the moon was full and bright. They sought wisdom, a glimpse of the great dance. Ilara, with her precise scientific instruments packed away in her suitcase, found herself relying on a different kind of sensor, her intuition. She felt the subtle shift in the air pressure, the prickle on her skin, the almost imperceptible hum that Hamish spoke of. She started cross-referencing Hamish's stories with her own knowledge of celestial mechanics and ancient astronomy. She pulled out her old, dusty star charts, not the modern, precise ones, but replicas of ancient constellations, the ones drawn by hands that saw gods and stories in the pinpricks of light. She began to notice patterns. Certain standing stones aligned with solstices and equinoxes, but also, surprisingly, with the rising points of specific, bright stars, not just Polaris, but stars like Sirius, Arcturus. Even faint nebulae that would have been barely visible to the naked eye yet were clearly marked on some of the archaic charts she found in old, musty local libraries. It was as if the ancients possessed a wisdom beyond what modern science credited them with, a way of perceiving the subtle energies of the universe without telescopes or spectrographs. One evening, as a sliver of new moon hung like a fragile crescent above the rugged peaks, Ilara was poring over a faded, hand-drawn map Hamish had lent her. It was less a map and more a collection of symbols, lines, and strange pictograms. One symbol, a spiral within a circle, recurred frequently, always linked by dotted lines to stars and to specific points along the loch. She recognized the spiral immediately. It was a common motif in ancient art, often associated with cosmic journeys, life cycles, and infinity. But here, it seemed to be a key. As she traced one of the lines, connecting the spiral symbol near the loch to a small cluster of stars, a cluster she recognized as a specific open cluster in the constellation of Cassiopeia, a curious sensation washed over her. It wasn't a physical change, but a sudden, intense clarity of thought, a moment of profound interconnectedness. It was as if the very atoms in her body resonated with the ancient ink on the paper, and the distant starlight it represented. The theoretical became visceral. She stood by her cottage window, looking out at the inky blackness of the loch, a vast, silent mirror to the heavens. The moon was too new to cast much light, but the stars were impossibly bright, diamond dust scattered across a velvet cloth. And as she watched, a ripple, larger than any she had seen before, spread from the center of the loch, silent and slow. It wasn't the agitated wake of a boat, nor the gentle movement of the wind. It was deliberate, purposeful, as if something immense had merely shifted beneath the surface, acknowledging her presence, or perhaps acknowledging the nascent understanding growing within her. A profound sense of calm settled over her, a deep, abiding peace that quieted the restless chatter of her analytical mind. She was no longer just an astrophysicist studying data. She was a participant in an ancient, ongoing narrative. The loch was not just a body of water, it was a living, breathing library of cosmic secrets waiting for the right moment, the right seeker, to unveil them. Elara knew, with a certainty that hummed in her bones, that she was close. The soothing mystery of Loch Ness had worked its magic, peeling away the layers of intellectual armor she had built around herself. She had come seeking a respite, and instead she had found a doorway. The first chapter of her journey was closing, leaving her standing on the precipice of something truly extraordinary, something that transcended both science and myth, uniting them in a breathtaking dance of discovery. The cosmic secrets were not just out there, in the distant reaches of space. They were here, beneath the swirling mists, in the heart of this ancient, whispering loch, waiting for the perfect alignment of stars and soul. She felt a profound connection, as if the loch itself was breathing with her, preparing for the great unveiling. The air grew chillier as the hours passed, but Elara remained by the window, mesmerized. Her initial academic curiosity had transformed into a deep, almost spiritual yearning. She was no longer simply observing, she was sensing, feeling, connecting. The loch whispered to her, not in words but in vibrations, in the subtle dance of light on its surface, in the profound silence that held the promise of untold stories. She realized that the scientific method, for all its brilliance, was only one lens through which to view the universe. Here, at Loch Ness, she was learning to see with another kind of vision, one that encompassed intuition, ancient wisdom, and the raw, untamed magic of the natural world. Her dreams, when they finally came, were vivid and compelling. She dreamt of vast, swirling nebulae, of galaxies like shimmering islands in an infinite sea. But these cosmic vistas were not distant and abstract. They felt intimately connected to the deep, dark water beneath her. She saw shimmering forms moving through the loch's depths, not flesh and blood creatures, but beings of pure light and energy, leaving trails of stardust in their wake. And always, there was the feeling of a presence, ancient and benevolent, watching over the loch, a silent guardian of unimaginable power. She woke each morning feeling refreshed, yet strangely altered, as if the dreams had subtly rewired her perception. The mundane tasks of lighting the fire or brewing tea took on a ritualistic quality. Each walk by the loch was a pilgrimage. She paid attention to the smallest details, the intricate patterns of frost on a blade of grass, the distinct calls of unseen birds, the scent of damp earth after a rain shower. It was a conscious effort to live in the present, to be fully immersed in the sensory richness of her surroundings. This deliberate slowing down, this conscious presence, was part of the soothing balm the highlands offered, preparing her for the revelations to come. Hamish continued to be a constant, yet unobtrusive, presence. He would sometimes appear at her cottage door with a small basket of freshly picked wild mushrooms or a thermos of hot broth on a particularly cold morning. He never pushed for information, never asked what she was looking for. He simply knew. His eyes held an ancient wisdom, a quiet understanding of the rhythms of the land and the secrets it held. "The loch has chosen you, lass," he'd said one day as they sat on a mossy outcrop overlooking the water, watching a lone sailboat glide silently across the distant surface. "She reveals herself only to those who listen with their hearts, not just their minds." Alara found herself drawing more and more, not just the landscapes but abstract patterns, spirals, interconnected lines, shapes that resonated with the cosmic energy she now felt almost palpably. She found an old, smooth stone by the loch shore, flat and dark, and began to etch these symbols onto its surface with a sharper stone, a primitive act of creation that felt deeply satisfying. It was her way of communicating with the unspoken, of translating the invisible into the tangible. As the weeks turned into months, Alara felt herself shedding the rigid skin of her former life. The astrophysicist who had sought neat equations and verifiable data points was slowly, gracefully, transforming into something else, a seeker of holistic truth, a bridge between the seen and the unseen, the scientific and the mystical. She realized that the cosmic secrets were not merely about distant stars and galaxies, but about the profound interconnectedness of all things, from the smallest pebble on the loch shore to the grandest supernova exploding light-years away. Loch Ness, in its deep, silent wisdom, was teaching her this fundamental truth. The air, usually damp and cool, took on an electric hum as the autumn equinox approached. The leaves on the ancient trees began to turn, painting the hillsides in fiery hues of russet, gold, and crimson. The sky seemed to grow even vaster, the stars brighter, clearer, as if the thinning atmosphere offered a less obstructed view into the cosmic tapestry. Alara felt a growing sense of anticipation, a quiet hum of excitement beneath the profound calm she had cultivated. It was almost as if the loch itself was holding its breath, waiting for a celestial cue. She consulted the ancient map Hamish had given her again, focusing on the cosmic alignments. The symbols now seemed to pulse with a subtle light in her mind's eye. There was a specific date, a precise alignment of the constellation Cassiopeia with the standing stone in the hidden glen and a particular, deep point in the loch. It was the night of the equinox, when day and night stood in perfect balance, a time traditionally associated with doorways and shifts in energy. This was the night. This was the time for the unveiling. A quiet thrill, not of fear, but of profound wonder, coursed through her veins. She had come to the ancient loch seeking peace from her scientific disillusionment, and instead she had been led to the precipice of a revelation that promised to redefine her understanding of existence itself. The soothing Scottish landscape had served as a gentle cradle, lulling her into a state of receptivity, preparing her for the cosmic truth that lay dormant beneath the azure depths. She was ready. The wind picked up, rustling through the pines, carrying the faint, earthy scent of peat and damp moss. The loch stretched out before her, a vast, dark mirror under the deepening twilight. It was no longer just water, it was a living entity, a sentient being pulsing with ancient power, holding secrets that transcended human comprehension. And Alara, the once skeptical astrophysicist, was now inextricably bound to its mystery, ready to receive whatever wisdom it chose to impart. The call of the azure deep was no longer a hum, it was a resonant, undeniable summons. The air on the night of the autumn equinox was crisp, carrying the sharp scent of pine needles and the earthy aroma of damp soil. A sliver of moon, barely a sliver, offered little light, but the sky, scrubbed clean by the preceding day's winds, was a breathtaking canvas of stars. Each pinprick of light seemed to pulse with a singular brilliance, casting faint, shimmering reflections on the almost perfectly still surface of Loch Ness. Alara, wrapped in layers of thick wool, her heart a quiet drumbeat against her ribs, made her way down to the hidden cove that Hamish had indicated, the one where the ancient stone stood sentinel, a silent witness to millennia. She carried no modern equipment, no light source beyond a small, flickering lantern that cast dancing shadows ahead of her. She relied instead on her memory of the path, etched into her mind from countless walks, and a profound internal sense of direction that had sharpened during her time here. The world had shifted for her. She was no longer merely navigating physical space, but moving through a landscape imbued with meaning, charged with an invisible energy. The ground beneath her felt alive, humming with the subtle pulse Hamish had spoken of. The standing stone, a dark monolith against the star-strewn sky, loomed silently as she approached. Its surface, cool and smooth beneath her fingertips, seemed to vibrate with a faint, almost imperceptible warmth. She oriented herself, using the instructions gleaned from the ancient map, her gaze fixed on the exact point where the constellation Cassiopeia, now high and clear in the northern sky, intersected with the top of the stone. A celestial triangulation, precise yet ethereal. As she stood there, a profound silence descended, not the absence of sound, but a quality of stillness that felt like a holding of breath by the entire world. The distant hoot of an owl, the gentle lapping of the loch against the shore, even these familiar sounds seemed to recede, absorbed into the vast, pregnant quiet. Alara closed her eyes, focusing on her breath, allowing her senses to expand, to reach beyond the physical. She felt the cool air on her skin, the subtle shift of the ground beneath her feet, the faint, sweet scent of heather carried on a phantom breeze. Then it began. Not with a dramatic flourish, but with a subtle, internal shift. A faint, almost imperceptible hum resonated in her chest, a low, gentle vibration that seemed to synchronize with an even deeper pulse emanating from the loch itself. It was the heartbeat Hamish had mentioned, a slow, ancient rhythm that permeated the very fabric of existence. The stars above seemed to brighten, their light not merely reflecting off the loch, but somehow entering it, drawing into its depths as if it were a vast, thirsty eye. From the deepest, darkest center of the loch, a soft, ethereal glow began to emanate. It was not the harsh glare of a spotlight, but a luminescence that seemed to be woven from starlight and moonlight, shimmering with all the colors of the aurora borealis, yet translucent like liquid silk. It spread slowly, a widening pool of celestial light, casting the surrounding hills and the ancient stone in an otherworldly glow. And then she saw it. Not a beast of flesh and blood, not the long-necked plesiosaur of legend, but something far, far more profound. From the heart of the light, a form began to coalesce. It was serpentine, immense, yet graceful beyond human comprehension. Its scales, if they could be called scales, shimmered with the iridescence of distant nebulae, swirling with the blues of interstellar dust clouds and the fiery reds of stellar nurseries. Its eyes, vast and ancient, were not the eyes of an animal but twin galaxies swirling with countless stars, holding within them the wisdom of eons. This was Nessie, but not as the world knew her. This was the guardian, the conduit, the ancient intelligence Hamish had hinted at. It was less a creature and more a living manifestation of cosmic energy, a being woven from the very fabric of the universe, anchored to the sacred point on Earth. It was magnificent, overwhelming, yet imbued with a profound sense of peace. There was no fear in Alara's heart, only an aching, humbling sense of wonder and recognition. As the luminous being fully emerged, floating effortlessly above the water, its long, elegant form curving in an arc of pure light, a cascade of images and sensations flooded Alara's mind. It was not telepathy in the conventional sense, but a direct, unfiltered transmission of knowledge, a communion of consciousness that transcended language. She saw the universe as it truly was, an intricate, interconnected web of energy and consciousness. She witnessed the birth of stars not as distant explosions but as breathtaking acts of creation, swirling gas and dust coalescing under the gentle hand of gravity, blossoming into incandescent furnaces of light and life. She soared through the vast, empty expanses between galaxies, feeling the subtle pull of dark matter, understanding its invisible embrace. She saw the cosmic microwave background radiation not as a faint hum but as the lingering echo of the universe's first breath, a resonant vibration that permeated all things. Then the visions shifted, focusing on Earth. She saw ancient civilizations, not the ones taught in history books, but forgotten peoples who lived in harmony with the cosmos. They understood the ley lines, the energy grids of the planet, and they revered places like Loch Ness as sacred conduits, direct channels to the celestial wisdom. They built their stone circles not just for astronomy but as living antennae designed to receive and amplify the cosmic energies. They communicated with beings of light, with the guardians like Nessie, understanding their role as keepers of balance, preservers of ancient knowledge. Nessie, the name seemed too small for such a being, yet it resonated with affection, conveyed its purpose. It was not a monster to be feared, but a living library, a repository of cosmic memories, safeguarding the knowledge of universal harmony. It was here to remind humanity of its forgotten heritage, its intrinsic connection to the stars, its potential for evolution beyond the material. The loch itself was not just its home, but its anchor, the nexus point where galactic energies intertwined with Earth's own energetic grid. The water was a living conduit, its depths holding vibrations from the beginning of time. Alara felt her own being expand, her consciousness merging with the vastness of the cosmic knowledge. The sterile equations of her past life now seemed to sing with newfound meaning, imbued with the very essence of creation. Physics and metaphysics danced together, two facets of the same profound truth. Quantum entanglement, once a theoretical curiosity, now felt like a tangible connection to the fabric of reality, a reflection of the universal interconnectedness. The overwhelming sensation was one of profound peace, a soothing balm that permeated every cell of her being. There was no judgment, no urgency, just an immense, compassionate understanding. She was not being given a mission, but an awakening. The secret was not a hidden treasure to be hoarded, but a truth to be embodied, to be lived. Slowly, gracefully, the luminous form of the guardian began to recede. It did not disappear, but rather dissolved back into the shimmering light from which it came, sinking into the deep, dark heart of the loch. The celestial glow faded, leaving only the faintest afterimage on the water like residual stardust. The air remained electric, humming with residual energy, but the overwhelming presence receded, leaving Alara standing alone by the ancient stone, trembling not from cold, but from the magnitude of what she had experienced. She didn't know how long she stood there, lost in the aftermath of the revelation. The stars above seemed to twinkle with a new, profound significance. The loch whispered secrets on the night breeze, secrets only she could now truly comprehend. She was changed irrevocably. The analytical mind that had brought her to Loch Ness had been shattered only to be reassembled into a new, more expansive consciousness. Her scientific journey had led her to the spiritual heart of the universe, and she knew with an unshakable certainty that her quest for truth had only just begun. When the first faint streaks of dawn began to paint the eastern sky in hues of rose and lavender, Alara made her way back to Kalich's Rest. The cottage, once a haven of retreat, now felt like a launching pad, a new beginning. She found Hamish waiting for her, sitting on her porch swing, a steaming mug in his hands. His blue eyes, deep and knowing, met hers. He didn't need words. "She spoke to you then?" Hamish said. His voice a quiet affirmation, not a question. Alara nodded, tears stinging her eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude and awe. "She did, Hamish. She showed me everything. The cosmos isn't just out there. It's here. In the loch. In us." Hamish smiled, a gentle, wise smile that seemed to encompass centuries of understanding. "Aye, lass. That's the ancient knowing. The veil as thin as gossamer here. The energy flowing from the stars, through the loch, into the very bones of the land. She reminds us that we are all but stardust, come alive to witness the great dance." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the loch, now shimmering with the first light of dawn. "Many seek the beast, but only a few find the guardian. And fewer still understand the true secret she protects." "What do I do now, Hamish?" Alara asked, her voice hushed, feeling the weight of the profound knowledge she now carried. Hamish chuckled softly. "You live it, lass. You carry the knowing. You share it, not with grand pronouncements, but with how you walk upon the earth. You were seeking peace from your grand equations, and now you have found a grander equation still, the harmony of all things." He gestured towards the loch. "The guardian doesn't ask for worship, Alara. It asks for remembrance. For connection. For us to remember our place in the cosmic tapestry." Alara spent the following days in a state of quiet integration. She wrote, not scientific papers, but lyrical prose, poetry, attempting to capture the ineffable beauty of the experience. She drew, using new colors, new forms, expressing the swirling nebulae and the luminous guardian. She realized that her purpose was no longer to dissect the universe into cold data, but to bridge the gap between science and spirit, to convey the profound interconnectedness of all existence through a language that spoke to the heart as much as the mind. She chose to stay at Loch Ness, for a while at least. She found a new rhythm deeply intertwined with the pulse of the loch and the land. She continued her walks, but now she saw with new eyes, perceiving the subtle energies that permeated the ancient stones, the whispering trees, the very air itself. She became a quiet guardian in her own right, a keeper of the understanding she had been gifted. The cosmic secrets were no longer theoretical constructs, they were a living, breathing reality anchored in the depths of Loch Ness. The soothing Scottish landscape had not just offered her solace, it had facilitated a profound awakening, a journey from the scientific known to the mystical unknown, culminating in a breathtaking reunion with the ethereal heart of creation. And as the mist continued to swirl around the ancient peaks, and the loch continued its silent, eternal vigil, Alara Vance knew that her true journey had only just begun. A perpetual dance with the cosmic truths whispered by the deep, azure heart of Ness. She carried the starlight within her, a luminous echo of the guardian's profound wisdom, forever changed by the secrets unearthed from the heart of the legendary loch. The fantasy had become reality, woven into the very fabric of her soul, a soothing, unending melody of cosmic understanding.